Mentioned it earlier, but the 1984 Busch Clash. Is there a question about that incident, that wreck, that you've not answered or been asked that you've always wanted to tell your side of the story of?
On the Busch Clash, no, I mean not really. I mean, I remember racing and getting turned sideways coming off a four, doing a crazy flip. I remember going up in the air and thinking I was going to land in the Goodyear Tower for a minute. And if you look at the video, the thing turns like a 45-degree angle. And so it had to be somebody, divine intervention, whatever, for that car to change its direction. But anyway, it hit the ground, and I don't remember much after that. I just remember that I remember it. Didn't hurt right away, but I remember once I came to. And I had a guy tell me that, I don't know if this is true or not, but he told me he was the first one got to me. He was a NASCAR official. His name was WW, they called him, Walter. From him and Doyle Ford used to ride from Nashville, Tennessee to all the races. They helped NASCAR. They showed up for weekend help. But he was a respiratory therapist at the hospital in Nashville. He was one of the first ones to get to me. And he said he took a pulse and there wasn't anything happening.
Wow.
And there's something that they can do. It's like a thump on the jugular vein. They thump you. And he said as soon as he thumped me, he said, I come right to it, and I was just like talking and everything. So I never got a chance to confirm that. But anyway, I knew that I was very lucky. I knew that, first of all. But, the night in the hospital, and wanted to keep me there a week. And basically, I was leaving the hospital. They can't really keep you. What's kind of amazing, though, is back then, NASCAR, if you could get in the window, you were legal to drive. There was no rules about concussions. So basically, I was back at it again. 2 days later, it rained the next day. So it was 2 days later, I was back in the car. But that's when I guess the famous duct tape deal got started. But you're fishing for something, so I'm not really quite sure what you're fishing for. But that was a lot of happened in that very short period of time.
No, I'm not necessarily fishing for anything. I'm just sure that you've told that story a million times.
Yeah.
And sure, you get tired of talking about it. But again, I really think it was the beginning of your reputation as the Iron Man.
Well, I can see. I don't want to bore you guys with details, but I remember being in the hospital. I woke up shortly after they got me on a stretcher when I woke up, and I remember them working on me, and I said, "Man, why are you working on my arms? My arm's fine." I said, "Man, my chest, my ribs are hurting. I think I broke ribs," and they're working on my arm and stuff. But later on, in the video, you see the arm out of the car, and how that car didn't roll over on my arm,
right.
I'll never know. Because the window net broke down. Well, what happened, and that wreck happened, the seat was a two-part seat. The bottom of the seat broke out. So basically, I was loose in the car. The shoulder belts basically weren't even there. You could put two people under the belts. So I was basically loose in the car. Then the lap belt helped me in. And then the window net, it didn't do much. But I remember going to the hospital that night. And then, of course, they give you all kind of painkiller and stuff. I sure loaded you up with stuff. And so I feeling pretty good. And I'm laying in the bed, and my wife Linda's looking at me. She says, "I know what it was." The conversation came up. I got to get out of here. I got to be at the track. And she listened to that for a little bit, and she finally says she was tired of hearing it. So she says, "Get out of this bed. If you can get out, I'll help you walk over to the mirror." So I walked over to the mirror, and I looked at the person, and I didn't recognize who was looking back, because at that time, my face was really swollen up, about twice the size, and my eyes looked like they were bleeding, and my arm, actually, I saw running across the video. I didn't know my elbow was actually bleeding and banged up pretty good. But she says, so I walked over to the mirror. She walked me back. She said, "What do you think now?" I said, "I think I'll spend the night. I'll try this tomorrow." And it literally went just like that. And the next morning we woke up and it was raining. But I went back got up, checked myself out, got out of the hospital. But it was more about, I think, worried about, I had all the, being let go from a job, and I fell into a good spot with Bud Moore, and it's basically my first day on the job. It's be like a NFL quarterback and getting hurt the first game. Anyway, and there's people lined up, for that spot, and I said, "Any way I can do it, I got to get in this car." And for two things, worried about not having a job, and not knowing if I could drive it or not, and didn't know until I got on the racetrack, and that was 2 days later, and I ran about 3 laps and came in. I said, "Bud, I got something's happening here. I don't know if I can't see or what it is." And him and I talked about it. And we get up and walk over to the toolbox, and there was a duct tape sitting there. And he said, well, your face is awful swollen. He said, you think those eyes are they're closing up for you got vertical G at Daytona. You don't get lateral, you get vertical. He said, maybe those big old baggy eyes are, blocking your vision. So I don't know. And the next thing we know, the tape breaks out, and start working on getting them taped open, go back out. And hey, I'm like new again. I can see again. And from then on, the rest of the week, and there was a lot of pain and stuff. And Humpy Wheeler's brother, David Wheeler, was a college football coach. He came down from Charlotte area and brought a flak jacket. I think flak jackets were new in that day. University of Florida football had them. It was a lot of people jumped in there. The local high school let me use their hot tub set up for athletes at the high school, Maitland High School, I guess it was, and ice. And so I was going through, when I went in the car, I was over there in the hot tub and then getting ice therapy and heat. And so David Wheeler was the one that kind of got me patched up for that weekend, and came to Richmond the next week to help me also.
We talked about Bud more, and you also talked about feeling the pressure of this being a good ride and people lined up to take it away. What did Bud say? Did you feel like you had any pressure from Bud to get back in the car?
No, not at all. No, the opposite of that. Bud was, kind of hard to describe. Bud was like a father type guy. He was, he'd look at you and, I don't remember him saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?" But, no, there wasn't any pressure. There's pressure from within. I mean, I think anybody in racing, and people, they talk about pressure, but it's the pressure you put on yourself. To not just to be okay is not good enough. That type of pressure, no different than a normal athlete that puts on themselves. You want to be the best you can be. And I didn't know if I could even operate, and I was able to drive that race. The following week, though, I think I went to Rockingham, and I had more trouble at Rockingham than I did at Daytona.
How did you blink? I mean, how did you?
I don't know. I mean, I say, when I say that, I watch you just do that. I watch you blink.
Yeah.
And everything above your eyelid. I say it wasn't like you just slapped duct tape on. I mean, you had to. My eyelid would still blink, but everything above the eyelid. It was like a cheap facelift, I guess. They pulled it right on back. Back then, it had to be hard because I had hair then.
Yeah.
But to get that duct tape to stick, I'm not even sure. But it all worked out, and that became the routine for a couple of weeks in a row with the tape. But it wasn't like you taped your eyelid. The eyelid would still work. You could still blink.
Yeah.
But the swollen part, the big bags were, almost like a fighter gets cut. I remember watching them years ago. They'd cut you, to get rid of all that excess skin out there. Right. A good thing Bud didn't have a razor knife handy. He would have reached. And as tough as Bud is, he would have probably reached for that. If I'd have seen the tape, I'd have taken the easy way out. But Bud might have gone for the razor knife.
Along comes Richmond. You're taped up. You're blacked up. Everything. Yeah. Nobody expects you to do much of anything in that race. Yeah. They're happy if you just survive it. But that's not the way it happened.
Yeah, no, it went really well. I mean, plus I was at hometown track. Yeah. I used to love Richmond, the old fairgrounds, and I think I had to pass Darrell Waltrip, which is not an easy character to pass in that day on the short track. I guess he was driving the juniors cars. Yeah, had to pass him on the outside, which happened to be where our car would work. It wasn't as big a deal as it sounded. I couldn't run the bottom, but I could run the top. So I remember, I think we had passed on about 20 laps to go. But what led up to that, I spent about 3 days at the University of Virginia Hospital in Richmond, going through tests, trying to figure out why was I dizzy? Why would one eye, when I had lateral G load, why would one eye cross over the other one? So I had some pretty good guys. A guy named Dr. Albright, I remember that name, was a guy that worked with me, and basically he said, it's head trauma. You've had a major concussion. This could last a week. It could last 6 months. It could last permanently. We don't know about head injuries, and that's basically, we did all kind of function tests, but basically, you definitely would have probably been. First of all, you would have never told NASCAR back in their day anyway, because they had that protocol coming along with the NASCAR, with the concussion protocol they introduced later, and everybody I think everybody had the same mentality that I did. Is they wanted you to take that test when you were halfway normal, which I don't know if anybody's really all that normal that drives these race cars. So anyway, they wanted to take that cognitive test. And then if you have a concussion, then you're expected to take it over. And if they seen a drop in performance, you're out. You got to sit out. So, that sounds great, but that doesn't pay the bills, sitting out.